Who can really confront radical Islam? See, in order to confront radical Islam, you're going to have to confront them head on in the public sphere. There's some of us in Britain that are doing it. These are some atheists that are doing it. Tom Holland, who's a historian. Geert Wilders out of Netherlands, who's trying to confront the Quran, and he's been probably the most successful in Europe. Anne-Marie Waters, who's debating them in the Oxford Union, in the Cambridge Union. Douglas Murray, writer and debater. These three are all friends of ours. In fact, all four of them are friends of ours who are actually doing it from an atheistic standpoint. These three are all friends of ours. In fact, all four of them are friends of ours who are actually doing it from an atheistic standpoint. Geert Wilders out of Netherlands, who's trying to confront the Quran, and he's been probably the most successful in Europe.
A speech made by the leader of Holland's far-right Freedom Party has caused a rift among its members, according to Dutch media reports. Earlier in the week, Geert Wilders encouraged followers to chant racist slogans against Moroccans. He addressed the meeting. So I ask, what do you want in this city, more or fewer Moroccans? Fewer, the crowd chants.
Something that I cannot stand.
Well, isn't the truth, Geert Wilders, that you and your political movement only thrive when there is high tension, high anger between the Muslim and immigrant community and what you would call the native Dutch community? That is when your party does well. In the opinion polls, your ratings go right down in periods of calm. You need to be provocative.
No.
But let's broaden it out and let's be very blunt. Are you saying, for example, the fact that Amsterdam, Rotterdam, The Hague are very soon, if not now, going to be majority non-white cities is not acceptable for the Netherlands?
Of course it's not acceptable.
And if you're saying it's not acceptable, you're either going to have to move all these people out, or you are going to have to leave your own country.
Unfortunately, in the two major cities of my country, Amsterdam and Rotterdam, if you look at the people under the age of 21, the majority is already from non-Western countries. And those are not people like here in the United Kingdom, people who come from your former colonies or from the West Indies and more or less share some kind of culture, feel British. In Holland it's not the case. 90% of them come from countries like Morocco and Turkey. I wouldn't want to live in a country as the Netherlands, where the majority of the country, let alone of a certain city, would be Islamic. That doesn't mean that I hate Islam. This is ridiculous. But I believe that we should be proud in the Netherlands.
You chose to say Islamic. You could have just said non-white. You are a racist.
No. And if you want to be open for people to come to our countries, also from other cultures, we should first solve the enormous problem we have in our country with people from non-Western countries. They are 3-4 times more dependent on social security, on the statistics
but
on crime.
Playing on people's fears, that is what you do.
Douglas Murray, writer and debater.
Let me give you a couple of figures just from the country I know best, my own. The recent census that's just been published at the end of last year in Britain demonstrated this. People who identify, after this massive period of mass immigration, people who identify themselves as white British people are now a minority in their capital city of London. If you become a minority in your own city, you are going to feel something about that. The papers have shown in Britain that 28,000 Romanians in the UK have been held for crimes in the last 5 years. 28,000. There are only 68,000 Romanians in the country.
Anne-Marie Waters, who's debating them in the Oxford Union, in the Cambridge Union.
Anne-Marie Waters runs an organisation called Sharia Watch, opposing Sharia councils. She's been described as a bigot and a racist. The University of West London cancelled an event she organised about alleged jihadist speakers. So we're doing an interview in a taxi. You didn't want to do it at your house?
No, of course not.
Because you're organising a Muhammad cartoon exhibition, is that right?
Not just me, there are several groups involved in it. Yeah.
Why are you doing that?
Because if ever there was a time to defend real freedom of speech, it is now. Look, people are being killed all over the world over this.
Is freedom of speech and drawing cartoons of Prophet Muhammad, is that the same thing?
Of course it is. Why isn't it? Why isn't it?
You could advocate for free speech, but choose not to offend millions of people. So you're inviting Geert Wilders.
Yeah.
He has tried to ban the Quran. He's tried to ban halal meat. Is that about free speech?
Tom Holland, who's a historian. The first one was written by Dr. Tom Holland. Dr. Tom Holland was a friend, still is. He and I went and had dinner back in 2006. I had just done a documentary with him on St. Paul. I told him at dinner afterwards that I'm not really an expert on St. Paul, but that he, as a historian, needs to change gears. Now, this man has written 3 bestsellers in Britain. He's considered to be one of our most celebrated historians in Britain today. He wrote Rubicon, which is the fall of the Roman Empire. He wrote Millennium, the fall of the Byzantine Empire. And he wrote Persian Fire, the fall of the Persian Empire. So I turned to him and I said, hold it, stop and think, Tom. These empires fell in the 7th century. What came next? And he said, well, Islam, of course. I said, exactly. You're the best equipped to write the next chapter. He said, well, what should I do? What is it you're talking about? I said, well, just write this down. So I gave 10 historical challenges in 2006. He wrote them down quickly, and that's the last I heard of Dr. Tom Holland until last year, 2012. Someone phoned me, said, have you looked at the Sunday Times? There on the cover of the Sunday Times was that book up there on the right, written by Dr. Tom Holland, In the Shadow of the Sword, was featured on the Sunday Times. He was going to have a meeting to introduce that book at Oxford University. So I went to that meeting. As soon as I walked in, he came up to me, grabbed my hand. He says, because of you, I wrote this book. He took 6 years to write this book at Oxford University. So I went to that meeting. As soon as I walked in, he came up to me, grabbed my hand. He says, because of you, I wrote this book. He took 6 years to write this book. As soon as I walked in, he came up to me, grabbed my hand. He says, because of you, I wrote this book. Came up to me, grabbed my hand. He says, because of you, I wrote this book.